Of Grenada with Ed Bird from Scuba Express, and we're going to be diving a wreck called the Bianca C. Ed, what can you tell us about the conditions of the Bianca C and what we can expect to see on the bottom?
Well, the Bianca C has been down for 35 years now. It sank in 1961, so there's a lot of coral growth on the wreck, as well as just, being able to see parts of the wreck. There's some beautiful coral on it, especially around the mast. And because of the current that we get out there, there's a lot of big fish on it. So you normally see a lot of barracudas, some snappers, some grouper. It's alive.
Very nice.
Yeah.
What about recognizable pieces of the shipwreck itself?
It's a bit difficult to recognize it versus in the condition it was when it went down. You can still see the mast in the front. That's predominant. You can see a little bit of the pilot house, but the wreck itself has deteriorated.
It collapsed in on itself?
It's collapsed in on itself a bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When divers are down there, are there places where they can penetrate inside the wreck, or is it mostly an exterior?
No, you can still penetrate the galley and some parts of the wreck. Of course, it takes, you have to be prepared to do penetration diving and that sort of thing.
And the experience level,
yeah,
sure.
You need to be trained for penetration diving and wreck diving.
What about depth, current, and visibility?
All right, the depth, the top of the deck starts at about 95 feet. And the wreck sits on about 160 to 165, depending on where you are. The current varies according to the time of day you're there and the tides. It's actually nice to dive it when there's a slight current, because the coral is out and is predominant at that time. The fish life is out, is better. So we like to dive it in the morning around 9, because normally the currents are running a little bit at that time.
Great.
And and sometime in the afternoon there's no current at all.
What about visibility?
Well, the visibility varies. In the season from December on until June, we normally have 80 to 100 foot visibility.
Oh, beautiful.
This time of the year, I would say it ranges anywhere from 40 to 70.
Okay.
So I guess everything is relative.
Yeah, absolutely. For me,
Yeah.
for me, that's great, because
Yeah.
I'm used to 3 or 4 feet. So if you can give me 30 or 40 foot visibility, I'm happy.
Yeah.
But that's
yeah.
fantastic. Now, what about? This is a beautiful setup you've got here. But how long of a boat ride do we have to the wreck?
You're 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes from the wreck.
So we're just around the
right around the corner, right around the Point Celine Airport corner, and you're there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the wreck only lies maybe 350, 400 yards off the beach.
Beautiful.
So it's
I'll look
very
forward to it.
accessible. Yeah.
Thank
It's a
you
lot
very
of fun.
much.
My pleasure.
Good.
Thank you.
Before heading offshore, let's take a quick look at Grenada, the spice island of the Caribbean. Grenada is of volcanic origin and is located in the Windward Islands. Although probably best known as a result of the U.S. military intervention of 1983, Grenada is actually a fantastic tropical vacation destination. The people here are very friendly, and the island has spectacular views: beautiful white sand beaches, lush mountainous rainforests, historical harborfront forts, and picturesque waterfalls, not to mention world-class diving. The Wreck Valley crew traveled to Grenada to dive the largest diveable shipwreck in the Caribbean. While here, we fell in love with this beautiful tropical island and its people. Now let's get our dive gear and head for the boat. Due to the Bianca C's depth and the planned duration of our dives, we brought our own double tank rigs and wreck diving equipment. After loading all our gear aboard Scuba Express's 28-foot fiberglass dive boat, it's time to head offshore. The Bianca C is located only a few miles from our hotel, only a 5 to 10 minute boat ride. Before we descend, let's now take a quick look at the history of the Bianca C. The Bianca C has been called the Titanic or Andrea Doria of the Caribbean. She was 593 feet long, had a 75-foot beam, and displaced 18,427 tons. She was owned by the Costa Cruise Lines of Genoa. The Bianca C was built in 1944, had triple screws, and could reach speeds up to 22 knots. On October 22, 1961, 10 days after she left Italy, one of the Bianca C's massive boilers exploded, instantly killing one of her crewmen. Fueled by bunker oil kept in storage tanks, flames rapidly spread throughout the entire vessel. The explosion on the ship was so massive it sent tremors through the town of St. George. Fortunately for the 750 passengers on board, the people of St. George were awakened and rushed to the fiery scene with a flotilla of small crafts to ferry everyone to safety. After the initial explosion and subsequent fires, the Bianca C was doomed. The island did not possess marine firefighting equipment for an event of this enormous magnitude. On October 24th, 2 days after her initial explosion, while the Bianca C was still ablaze and being towed out of the harbor by the British frigate HMS Londonderry, her burnt hull plates gave out and she went down off Port Saline. In gratitude for the efforts of the Grenadian people, the Italian government sent a statue of Christ of the Sea, which can now be seen guarding the harbor at St. George's. In February of 1989, a group of experienced wreck divers from New York traveled to Grenada and recovered the ship's bell. Back aboard the Scuba Express dive boat, our guide Kishan locates the wreck with land bearings and a keen set of eyes.
Have a good one, Joe.
See you guys at the anchor line.
Do you have his camera? All right, I'm set. Rick, how you doing? I'll meet you at the anchor line.
Yep. I'll be there in about 2 minutes.
Okay. You clear? Yep. Whenever you're ready.
Stay tuned. When Dive Wreck Valley returns, we'll be descending to explore the wreck of the luxury liner boats, which were used by escaping passengers. These L-shaped brackets are actually for lifeboat davits, once used to swing and lower the boats in an emergency. Diver Joe Koppelman recognizes another structure on the wreck. This square hole is the Bianca C's swimming pool. Once enjoyed by kids of all ages, the pool now has a deep end almost 140 feet deep. By looking closely, we can still find the pool's ceramic tiles, slightly camouflaged after over 35 years of submersion. The pool provides an easily identified point of reference for navigation on the wreck. Only a short distance away, we find a small spotted moray eel living within the Bianca C's debris. Rick finds an open hatch and enters to explore the big ship's interior. Please remember that penetration into any overhead environment demands not only the proper training and redundant equipment, but experience. Once inside, Rick finds not only easy access, but a well-lit interior. Ambient light enters the wreck through every available hole, illuminating most of this upper deck. There are also literally hundreds of portholes on the wreck. This is one of the more common round style. Rick also spots some beautiful square portholes. Deeper into the wreck now, Rick's penetration is hampered by the tight confines of the Bianca C's collapsed hull. It's time to exit the wreck and move on to a different area. Another key landmark is the Bianca C's Smokestack. It may take a little imagination to recognize, but her stack provides one of the highest reliefs on the site and is located just forward of the wreck's swimming pool on the wreck's starboard side. The outside shell of her smokestack is thickly blanketed in coral and marine growth. While inside, all we find is twisted debris and the rusted remains of some machinery. The stack, which leans to starboard, is one of the most easily located landmarks on the wreck, so it's great to use as a reference for navigation. As a small barracuda hovers over the Bianca's wreckage, an instructor leads tourists on a quick tour of the site. It seems that the Bianca C is no longer only for dedicated hardcore wreck divers, but can also be enjoyed by novice tourist divers. As Rick now heads astern to continue his exploration, he passes another of the Bianca C's lifeboat davits, which were located all along both sides of the liner. He spots another small spotted moray eel hiding amongst the Bianca's remains. Meanwhile, Joe is making the long swim to the wreck's bow. He finds her forward mast still standing upright on top of her main deck. By dropping to the sand, Joe films her starboard anchor, which sits in 165 feet of water. Look closely at the view of her bow from sand level, and you can identify both port and starboard anchor chains, still hanging as if anchoring the vessel in place. Inside our anchor room, we find her capstan and some machinery used for hauling the heavy anchors aboard. On the other end of the wreck, diver Fred Belisi is heading for the wreck's stern. Even though the Bianca C sits in 165 feet of water, most of the wreck can be explored without ever getting deeper than 130 feet. In fact, other than a few photo opportunities, there's little to see at sand level. On his way astern, Fred passes along this tubular structure, which is actually the Bianca C's port side stabilizer. Schools of fish hover over the wreck's stern, finding refuge from predators amongst the wreck's twisted hull plates. The Bianca C's rudder is easily identified and now sits exposed in a washout in almost 170 feet of water. Rick now enters a room in the vessel's stern, just above and forward of her rudder. The room's interior is covered with scattered debris, and there's quite a bit of machinery and plumbing. Again, square bronze portholes are found. Most do not have glass, which is probably a result of the massive fire which engulfed the entire vessel before sinking. As Rick continues his penetration, now within the tight confines of a small corridor, only small bubbles which leak out of the wreck give evidence to his location. Finally, Rick emerges from the wreck. As he exits, he takes a final look at a porthole with its swing plate open. Back home, portholes are sought-after, prized artifacts, but here they're almost commonplace. Only a few feet behind, Fred also emerges from the wreck. Our bottom time is now quickly running low, and it's time to head back towards the anchor and start our slow ascent towards the surface. While we ascend, we think about just how massive this wreck truly is. In fact, we've just barely scratched the surface. There are many interior rooms and corridors that still need to be explored. This is one of those wrecks that you could just never see enough of. Due to the depth and duration of our dives, we're now mandated to decompress before ascending to the surface. On most of our dives, this was a pleasant way to relax and pass the time. Joe even practiced his underwater bubble ring blowing technique. But on several dives, when the current was running, we all felt like flags blowing in the wind. Remember that a simple John line secures the diver, enabling for an easier hang when the current is running. Our trip to Grenada and exploration of the Bianca C was enjoyed by all. Now we just have to figure out how soon we can return. Stay tuned. Dive Wreck Valley will be right back.
Absolutely gorgeous wreck. Absolutely gorgeous.
Made it all the way down to the bottom?
Went out to the bottom of the bow, and the chain is hanging off, well, actually both sides, the starboard and the port side, but I was on the starboard side, and the anchor's just laying out in the sand. It's like about 160 there, but it's absolutely gorgeous.
That was your dive, Orion.
Excellent. Excellent. Got a bit of current down there, but it's a good dive.
What did you go to see?
We went to the swimming pool, and then we went down the center of the boat where it's cracked open, and looked inside and saw lots of big fish. We were looking for that midnight parrot, which is usually about this big, purple and black. Didn't see it today, but saw lots of other big fish, some amazing fish. It was good.
I don't know about you guys, but that was magnificent. Good visibility, a little bit of a current. What did you see, Freddie?
Oh, I seen the stern area. Me and Rick were in some sort of room in the stern area. It was absolutely spectacular. There was tons of valves in there, and there's a bit of a stairway in there, and but the room is starting to crush down pretty good in there, you know. But it was spectacular in there, and I did some filming of Rick in that room, so it should come out real good.
And the colors in there from the different coral, reds and yellows, and picking up on that. Hopefully the film came out well.
Yeah.
Joe swam all the way to the bow.
Yeah,
against the current, with the current, and then against it back.
well, the bow is just really amazing because once you drop into the sand in front of the bow, you get a real sense of how large the wreck is looking up at it. And it comes up out of the sand just a great distance. And there's a big giant anchor just in front of the bow. And you can see that there's a regular stream of current running by because the life is so healthy there. You've got fish in all the nooks and crannies, but you've got soft coral growing out all over the hull. And then just behind the bow, the chain room, the anchor room is really amazing because you can see through it. So you've got clear water on the other end. But current must run through that pretty regularly also because that had a lot of soft coral inside, well inside the room.
Beautiful.
And the windlass is huge. And just a lot of the ship's mechanisms there.
What I like about it is this ship is so massive. You know, we only have a couple of dives to do here, but boy, you could spend a lot of time on this wreck and just never run out of places to go and things to see.
No, every room I saw, I wanted to go into the next one.
We're gonna have to arrange another trip to Grenada.
Yeah, there's no
come back and do it
question
again.
about that.
I would highly recommend Grenada to any divers traveling to the Caribbean. Grenada offers world-class reefs where divers can find everything from schooling fish, huge stingrays, to sea turtles. Of course, the one thing that sets Grenada apart from other Caribbean vacation destinations will always be the wreck of the Bianca C. As we cruise back, we're already planning for our next wreck diving adventure and when we can return to Grenada, the Spice Island of the Caribbean.
Dan Berg's Dive Wreck Valley has been brought to you by Peter Hughes Diving, setting the world standard in dive adventure. Marine Sonic Side Scan Sonar. Fantasy Scuba and Aquatic Center in Milltown, New Jersey. And by Dutch Springs, the Divers Amusement Park. We hope you've enjoyed the show and will join us again next time for another wreck diving adventure on Dive Wreck Valley.